This is Weights and Wealth, your one-stop shop for entertaining education on building a stronger body and bank account.
We are not doctors or financial advisors and must warn you this is not medical or investing advice. It is for your entertainment.
Welcome back to Weights and Wealth, your number one podcast for faith, fitness, finances, family, and freedom-based information. We're glad to be back. Nick could not join us.
Loosely based information.
Yes. Nick wound up having a work meeting. We got off work early, so it's just Sean and I with a couple of beers here. This should be a quick and fun episode. But it's going to be based around strategies you can use if you're feeling run down to maybe not feel as run down.
Yep. You want to give that shout out? Because there is someone who is particularly run down today.
Yes, as soon as this episode is over, I have to go get my run-down four-legged friend, Lenny. Just got neutered earlier today, so about to go pick him up. Alex is going to go him up right after this. So
it's got to be the most rundown you can be as a male of any species. I can't imagine feeling good in any way, even if it's voluntary. Like the guys who go get a vasectomy. Yeah, right? The guys who get a vasectomy. That's I understand.
Is that what happens when you get a vasectomy? They chop off your balls. Is that?
Well, they cut the thing. Oh. So you still have your testicles.
I say that because in the office the other day, one of the guys, some of the guys were talking about getting vasectomies because some of the guys were having a bunch of children, and one of the guys literally thought that vasectomy they chop off your balls, and we were like, "What?" No.
It's just a little tube that they cut.
Yeah, vas deferens. Yeah.
But I imagine, you got to feel weird the day after when everything's. Probably, this is supposed to be family friendly, so we probably shouldn't go into too much detail. But I think every man out there can imagine it being a very bad day whenever something significant and invasive happens down there.
Yeah.
So we can all express our sympathies for Lenny.
Yeah.
And wish him a speedy recovery. So the Weights wisdom of the week is don't use alcohol as a Band-Aid. Use caffeine and nicotine. I didn't write that. Ted did. Cheers. So maybe he should explain more. I agree with most of it, but at the same time, I will say, and I'm not going to lie, this is probably contrary to best practices, but after a long hard weekend, particularly with us being in the military, being out in the field for multiple days on end, post-field beers are fantastic. And I think that's huge morale booster. And I think the morale boost versus how it actually affects you recovery wise is totally worth it. As long as you don't
shower beer is
as long as you don't hit
beer.
25 beers, I think it's worth it.
It's just what the Bible teaches, everything in moderation.
Yeah.
Right? So but as far as don't use alcohol as a Band-Aid, a lot of people wind up using alcohol as a Band-Aid for stress, and that's when alcohol use becomes very unhealthy for a lot of people. If you're using alcohol more socially here and there, I think it can be healthy for social situations, or like you said, just you accomplished something, you worked hard, and you're just using it 1 or 2 beers to decompress. That's much different than every time you're stressed.
Just like the Bible said, Jesus' first miracle was turning water into wine. So I don't know. I don't want to badmouth anybody, but I think that Jesus is generally pro-alcohol, and it's definitely a something that can be abused very easily.
Yeah. But if you're already feeling run down,
the carbs in it, they actually, I have seen
there's not
studies.
that many carbs in beer, dude.
I think there's a good amount.
There's 4.
Really?
To 12. It depends on the beer. Light beer is going to have 4 or 5 grams of carbs. An IPA, something heavier, might have more 12.
Yeah.
What does this one have? It's gonna be on the 6-pack, not on here.
Well, it won't show us.
But
I imagine it's a perfectly good amount of carbs. It makes it worth it.
But yeah, if you're already feeling run down, like alcohol is a toxin, and like no matter what you're eating, your liver is going to first prioritize breaking down that poison, the alcohol. So you're not helping yourself by drinking if you're already feeling run down. Whereas caffeine is a stimulant. So if you're feeling run down, so the premise of this episode is we were going to record a more financial kind of episode, but Nick is at work and got called into a meeting. It's Friday afternoon, so we weren't able to record with Nick. So we changed it because Sean and I both had platoon live fire this week, where we were in the field for a few days, briefing op ords, which no one on here that isn't military knows what that means, and then doing like a basically an exercise where we go down a range with 20 to 30 guys and overtake an objective.
Yes, it's like practicing maneuver warfare. So
with live rounds,
to make it as simple as possible, it's basically as close as the Army can get to putting you in a quote unquote real combat scenario. Obviously, but they can't simulate the rounds coming back.
Yeah.
But what they can do is they can give you a situation which causes you to practice your decision-making process as a leader, and gives your soldiers marksmanship practice in a field environment and like ways to maneuver in the field. So overall, it's generally like, you know, the kind of the peak training event of a platoon
of a training cycle.
Of a training cycle is generally platoon live fires. Some units will go all the way up to company, like my old unit. But oftentimes, units will get to like a rotation or a CTC rotation as well, which is the training center, and they'll do something like a company or a battalion live fire there, and that'll count as like the final collective exercise.
There's basically a progression up to deployments where on the smaller side of units, you'll do live fire exercises building up to platoon exercise. And then as Sean said, you'll go to a training center with a larger unit before you deploy somewhere. Is basically how the Army goes through a training progression. Kind of like a powerlifting cycle if you're prepping up for a meet. You know, it's like the same kind of thing.
Micro movements and, you know, build up to the big ones. But yeah, so basically all of this is kind of coming back around to the fact that both me and Ted are very tired. And we were like, okay, well, we're really tired. And, you know, Nick dropped out. So, you know, we don't know anything about money.
Nick's really hurting finance. My one bingo space today where it says Nick is on at least 30 episodes this year. Killer. That meeting ended that one for me.
Yeah, it might be over already for Ted's bingo. But basically we were like, okay, well, what can we talk about? We can talk about how tired we are. And so I went and picked up a 6-pack of Cold Snap White Ale, Sam Adams. Great beer. Shout out Sam Adams if you want to sponsor us. You know, this random podcast with like 200 followers. We would be very happy. Veteran owned.
Moving before we get into the real information that might actually help you in this episode, we'll jump into the intro article, which is more of a meme, but it's two intro articles next to each other. So the first article of the two is from the New York Post, and it says just 12% of Americans, mostly men, are eating half of our beef supply, new research says. And then the second article right next to it in this meme is 88% of Americans are metabolically unhealthy, says Utah scientist. Here's what to do about it. So the opposite of 12% obviously is 88%. So
I don't know if it's the opposite. It's like the completion of 100%.
Yeah, I don't know the mathematical term. Yeah. After my 8th, 9th concussion, I lost all mathematical skills. So, if 12% of Americans are eating half the beef, and then
only 12% of Americans are also metabolically healthy, therefore there's probably at least a significant crossover. You know, like the Venn diagram here might be a circle.
I think this would be a more egregious mistake than causation equals or correlation equals causation, but it's a fun meme to look at for sure.
Yeah. I mean, who knows? Maybe we'll simply be right.
Yeah, but I mean, if you are eating a lot of beef, you're getting a lot of protein.
Yes.
And you're probably not eating a lot else if you're eating that much beef. Which means that you're getting a lot of protein, mostly whole foods, a lot of micronutrients, vitamins and minerals, and you're probably more metabolically healthy. So there is like some kind of truth to this juxtaposition in this meme.
Obviously, it's meant to have you infer that that obviously 12% of American men are eating all beef and they're the only healthy people out there. Obviously, that's not true. There are metabolically healthy people out there that are not these individuals who are eating all the beef. But there is, like Ted said, probably a significant crossover between the populations. So essentially, what this all comes around to, right, is what are some ways to get back to feeling 100% after you've had a significant training event. Whether it's, so for us, like our training event was both mental and physical, as well as nutrient draining
and sleep draining.
So like it's pretty much the whole trifecta when you're out in the field of the Army. You're doing physical activity. As a leader, you are constantly exercising your mind. So you're going to be pretty like drained from that. And then the food is not very good.
Food's crap.
It's like pretty much just carbs and sugars. It's literally to keep you alive and not provide any type of performance or nutrition. And then you're also generally not getting much sleep at all. And the sleep you are getting is generally very low quality.
And there's the added stress of I have people around me shooting live rounds. I'm responsible as the platoon leader kind of for everyone's safety. It's also on like the like safeties
Grand
within
scale.
the unit, and like the greater unit itself that's putting on the platoon live fire is also like responsible for the safety of everyone. But like as the platoon leader, like you feel a great responsibility for all of your guys' safety as you're out there, and you're trying to deconflict anything that would be unsafe as you're watching and leading it as it unfolds. So the first one that I want to touch on is probably the one that people will not know about more than any other tidbit we hit on. So like a lot of people know about general strategies for reducing stress and stuff like that. And we'll hit some of those. But the first one here is a lot of people, especially that listen to this podcast, know that creatine is a great supplement. It's one of the most studied supplements along with caffeine, and it's completely safe. It's safer than caffeine. And most people take creatine for the physical benefits of it, for gaining strength and muscle and stuff like that, being able to do more reps in the gym. But recently, a ton of research has been coming out on the other effects of creatine as far as its effects neurally on the brain. And there was a study that came out last year where, before I hit that, a typical dose of creatine that people will take for the gym is 5 grams. Is like any scoop of creatine you get from any supplement company is going to be a 5-gram scoop of creatine. So last year, a study came out in 2024 where they sleep deprived people and then gave them a 20 gram dose of creatine. And they did it was a randomly controlled double blind trial. So they had placebo and they had the 20 gram of creatine, and they had all the participants do it with placebo and then also with the creatine. And they sleep deprived them for 21 hours and then studied their cognitive performance and their metabolic markers. And what they found was that when people took a huge dose of 20 grams of creatine when they were sleep deprived, their cognitive performance boosted a very significant amount, almost back to baseline. And their metabolic indicators of what would normally be, or like in the placebo, what's reduced, I guess, with the metabolic indicators from having low sleep, as is typical, those were also elevated back towards baseline levels. So if you are feeling run down, if you've, especially if you've gone through like a big event, or if you're sleep deprived, taking 20 grams of creatine, 4 scoops of a normal creatine supplement in one day, like when you're sleep deprived, can be super beneficial. I do this sometimes at work if I'm coming off a night of 2 or 3 hours of sleep. Instead of putting just 1 scoop in my water bottle in the morning, I'll just throw 4 in there, and the water will be a lot chalkier. but it will help me feel better.
Interesting. Yeah. See, like I didn't know that. I know that like creatine has all sorts of, benefits, and honestly, I need to be better about taking it more. But I didn't know that. I didn't see that study. It's very very interesting. Obviously, there's a bunch of other supplements you can take. Like personally, like my strategy when I come home is I'm getting like the best like lunch together possible, So like when I came home, it was like sourdough, pickles, cheese, fruit, red meat. I think it was like a London broil that I had like maybe 200 grams. So maybe like a quarter of a pound left over, and I just kind of reheated it on the stove. But then obviously on top of that, I'm taking like my glycine, my vitamin D3, vitamin C, all these different micronutrients and stuff like that to try and like just like overcharge myself right away, and then get that good meal in alongside that. And then it's like, okay, from there, now I can go into like the relaxing portion, because at least to me, like what makes sense is plussing up, and like whether you're coming off like a bender or like, or being out in the field like we are, where it's like you're not getting a lot of good food or food at all, and you're like seriously depleted, is like plus up, like fill your stores back up, and then go into recovery mode. Like you don't want to come home and just like pass out.
Yeah. And what Sean's saying with that meal, like he was listing whole foods. It was a combination of really good carbs, fats, and proteins. And that's not just applicable to us coming back from the field where we were eating crappy and we weren't getting a lot of sleep and we had expended a lot of calories. That's applicable to really like anyone that's stressed or sleep deprived, because when you're stressed or sleep deprived or both, your hormones, not like testosterone and estrogen and cortisol, but your hormones that affect satiety and stuff like that, how full you feel and your cravings, leptin, ghrelin, peptide YY, those kinds of hormones. Those hormones shift when you're either really stressed or when you are sleep deprived, and they make it so that you feel less full and so that you have more cravings for high calorie foods, which is why when people a lot of times are stressed, it's one of the reasons they'll stress eat. Part of it is the dopamine effect they'll get, and part of it is like their cravings increase. So things you can do are like making sure you get a really good meal that has whole foods and protein and good fats and carbs. Another big thing with that is studies will show that if you get over 20 grams of protein in the morning for breakfast, it will help level out that leptin, ghrelin, peptide YY, so that you reduce your cravings and so that you feel more full throughout the day. So that's just for like all the time. You should always be striving to get minimum 20 grams of protein in the morning to help with reducing cravings and moderating those hormone profiles.
Yeah. No, that 100% makes sense. Obviously, like this whole episode is kind of focusing on replenishment recovery, and so you can't complete this discussion without talking about sleep. Like you can eat all you want and practice all your, yoga relaxation techniques or whatever you want, but like you will not recover without quality sleep. So Ted, if you want to walk us through some of the best like sleep practices and stuff like that, to knock out.
I actually don't think we've done different mega episodes before where we deep dive. For example, like our testosterone mega episode. If you haven't gotten the testosterone ebook, how to naturally increase your testosterone levels by 69% or more, that is on our website. Factual number from my blood work, 69%. Not just a flashy title. But yeah, go to weightsandwealth.com or weightsandwealthpodcast.com. Weights and Wealth.
Yeah, it's Weights and Wealth Podcast.
Weightsandwealthpodcast.com. And get that ebook. Just throw your email and we'll send it to you. But we should do a mega episode on sleep. But some quick baseline things. So studies show that around 67 to 68 degrees for a sleeping environment makes you sleep a lot better. If it's warmer than that, it increases. A lot of times how they measure sleep quality in studies is nighttime waking occurrences, so how many times you wake up in the middle of the night. So 67 to 68 degree environment for sleeping helps reduce the amount of times you wake up in the night and helps increase your deep sleep, your REM sleep, good measures of sleep quality. Also, aside from that, making sure that you're sleeping in a dark room, so not just a cool room, but a dark room. And then, interestingly enough, I was going over this with a bunch of soldiers the other day when I was walking. I was trying to help some people after we did some body composition analysis stuff with some soldiers from the MPs, but they were talking about how they live in the barracks, and so they spend a lot of time in their room, like in their bed before bed. Yeah, and I was telling them that
it's not a relaxation.
Exactly.
Yes, they're doing work there. They're playing there. I'm saying playing as in like they're messing around on their phone, or like they're not resting in bed.
Yeah, I was telling them about some studies that are really interesting because you wouldn't really think it's something that matters, but it does have an effect. Your brain subconsciously has an influence where if you're spending time in your bed, like watching TV or doing other stuff, you don't get as good sleep as when you only use your bed for sleeping or for intimate activities with your partner. So like those are the recommendations, is that you only use your bed for those activities. And when you start doing other things in your bed, your brain has a more difficult time kind of separating that as like, this is the environment for me to sleep in. Yeah. Which is kind of interesting that actually has an effect. And then other things, glycine, good for sleep. Yeah. Magnesium, a lot of people say is good for sleep, but magnesium has a bunch of different effects, and there's a bunch of different forms of magnesiam. So if you take,
that's a whole episode in and of itself.
Yeah. If you take magnesium citrate, you'll poop easier. It will have effects on your digestive system. But if you take magnesium L-threonate, it's the only form of magnesium that crosses the blood-brain barrier, and it's really good for increasing your GABA and other neurotransmitters that help you sleep. So you can take glycine and magnesium threonate. There's different supplements you can take to help you sleep. So we'll do a whole episode specifically on sleep coming up soon, but those are some of the quick pointers for sleep.
Yeah, so it's like final point, essentially. I know that Ted has to scoot and go take care of, Lenny and his distressed groin. But essentially, replenish, de-stress, detox, and then get some sleep. This goes for whether it's purely intellectual and you just got off busy season. That's a shout out to Nick. Whether it's a weekend bender and you've been up doing heinous drugs and drinking a boatload of alcohol for like 4 days in a row, or you're just you ran a marathon this morning and now you need to recover. It's like any type of activity that is going to put you in a bad situation physically. Kind of focus on those things is fill back up your nutrient stores.
Yeah.
Begin to wind down.
With nutrient stores, something we didn't hit on is hydration. Yes. We won't bore you too much with the specifics of hydration because I could do a micronutrient monologue M&M here with that. But having
electrolytes and water.
Yeah. Drink water, but don't only drink water. Also make sure you get electrolytes. So Sean was saying earlier he had pickles when he got back. Pickles are great for electrolytes. You could also have a Pedialyte or an LMNT, something that's got like a gram of sodium, also some magnesium, some calcium, some of those other electrolytes. If you get something like a Gatorade or a Powerade or one of those drinks that says electrolytes on it, but it only has 140 milligrams of sodium compared to 1,000 or a gram of sodium, that's a big difference. So make sure you actually get something with some strength in it. Yeah. I'm not sure where Liquid IV falls on that spectrum. That's I'd have to really look at all these different sources, and we can put out a thing on how hydrating these different sources are. But something like a Pedialyte or an LMNT, I know have a lot of electrolytes in them. So
100%.
And then before Sean finishes wrapping us up, I think another good thing is like de-stressing techniques. So a lot of people know about all the de-stressing techniques, especially if you're in any kind of career that has HR people that hound you with things. And, they're always telling you how to de-stress, and it's really annoying.
I could de-stress more if you would just leave me alone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's like in the Army, it's like we get like the resiliency training, and it's the worst because it's always at like Friday at 4:00 in the afternoon. You're like, I just want to go home, and this guy's coming to tell me not to kill myself
for an hour.
Yeah, it's like come on, cool, man.
Yeah. But I think like one thing that I think really helps me de-stress, I guess we'll go over a couple things real quick. Taking walks is really good for you, especially outside. Doing breathing exercises where you're focused on deep breathing, because a lot of times if you're in a stressful state, a lot of times when you're stressed, you're chest breathing. So focusing on taking long breaths in and out and breathing through your stomach and getting out of that chest breathing, that's going to put you in more of a fight or flight state. And then music is good for a lot of people, but definitely depends on the type of music you're playing.
Yeah.
And then for me, like reading the Bible is insanely de-stressing. It just like completely brings me down. Or sometimes I get really hyped up about something new, but I think those are all.
Don't be reading Maccabees.
Praying / meditating also
yes.
good. Yeah. Sean, any last comments before we wrap up here?
No, just get your electrolytes, get your creatine, get your protein in, and then take a shower and go to bed.
I do have one last comment.
What's up?
Your haircut.
That's pretty rough. Yeah. At least I don't have your face. No, I can't swap that out. I can get a new haircut. You can't get a new face.
We are required to get haircuts basically every week with the high skin fade for the unit that we're at. And the cheapest option is to go to the barbershop on post with the old Vietnamese ladies.
Yeah, and they butcher you.
They have shaky hands sometimes. I'm not sure if having Parkinson's is a requirement to get hired there, but it does seem like it sometimes.
They might be low on their electrolytes. Like we should send them this episode. Be like, hey, maybe add some creatine to your morning coffee.
All right, we will see you guys next week. What's on the docket for next week? We're coming up towards episode 100, but next week, if you want, we'll see you next week. I forget what it is, but it actually might be book club. We've got that coming up.
Cool.
So the next book club episode is Good Energy.
Yeah, I should learn how to read first.
Yeah. Good Energy by Casey and Callie Means, I think, is the next book club episode. So if you want to read that ahead of time, go ahead and read that. And if you haven't checked out our other book club episodes, make sure you go back and hit those. All right, we will see you guys next week. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for joining us today at Weights and Wealth. And don't forget to apply today's lessons to live healthy and wealthy.
If this conversation will contribute to your fitness and financial gains, please share it with a friend or family member and give a 5-star review so more people can lift bigger weights and get bigger bank accounts.